Good morning, guys. We're going to read chapters 4 and 5 of the Magic Treehouse, Dinosaurs Before Dark. Chapter 4 is called Henry. Jack gasped as Annie reached out her hand toward the Pteranodon. Oh no, he thought. Annie was always trying to make friends with animals, but this was going too far. Don't get too close to him, Annie, Jack shouted. Annie touched the Pteranodon's crest. She stroked his neck. She was talking to him. What in the world is she saying? Jack wondered. He took a deep breath. Okay, he would go down too. It would be good to examine a Pteranodon. He could take notes like a scientist. Jack started down the rope ladder. When he reached the ground, he was only a few feet away from the creature. The Pteranodon stared at Jack. His eyes were bright and alert. He's soft, Jack, said Annie. He feels like Henry. Jack snorted. He's no dog, Annie. Feel him, Jack, said Annie. Jack didn't move. Don't think, Jack, just do it, Annie said. Jack stepped forward. He reached out very cautiously. He brushed his hand down the creature's neck. Interesting, Jack thought. A thin layer of fuzz covered the Pteranodon's skin. Soft, huh? Said Annie. Jack reached into his backpack and pulled out a pencil and a notebook. He wrote, Fuzzy skin. What are you doing? Asked Annie. Taking notes, said Jack. We're probably the first people in the whole world to ever see a real live Pteranodon. Jack looked at the Pteranodon again. The bony crest on top of his head was longer than Jack's arm. I wonder how smart he is, Jack said. Very smart, said Annie. Don't count on it, said Jack. His brain's probably no bigger than a bean. No, he's very smart. I can feel it, said Annie. I'm going to call him Henry. Jack wrote in his notebook, Small brain? ? Jack looked at the creature again. Maybe he's a mutant, he said. The Pteranodon tilted his head. Annie laughed. He's not a mutant, Jack. Well, what's he doing here then? Where is this place? Said Jack. Annie leaned close to the Pteranodon. Do you know where we are, Henry? She asked softly. The creature fixed his eyes on Annie. His long jaws were opening and closing like a giant pair of scissors. Are you trying to talk to me, Henry? Asked Annie. Forget it, Annie, Jack wrote in his notebook. Mouth like scissors. Did we come to a long time ago, Henry? Asked Annie. Is this a place from long ago? Suddenly Annie gasped. Jack! Jack looked up. Annie was pointing toward the hill. On top stood a huge dinosaur. Chapter 5, Gold in the Grass. Go, go, said Jack. He threw his notebook into his pack. He pushed Annie toward the rope ladder. Bye, Henry, she said. Go, said Jack. He gave Annie another push. Quit it, she said, but she started up the ladder. Jack scrambled after her. Jack and Annie tumbled into the treehouse. They were panting as they looked out the window at the dinosaur. It was standing on the hilltop, eating flowers off a tree. Oh, man, whispered Jack. We are in a long time ago. The dinosaur looked like a huge rhinoceros with 3 horns instead of 1. It had 2 long horns above its eyes, and another one grew out from its nose. It had a big shield-like thing behind its head. Triceratops, said Jack. Does he eat people? Whispered Annie. I'll look it up. Jack grabbed the dinosaur book. He flipped through the pages. There, said Jack, pointing to a picture of a Triceratops. He read the caption. The Triceratops lived in the late Cretaceous period. This plant-eating dinosaur weighed over 12,000 pounds. Jack slammed the book shut. Just plants, no meat. Good, said Annie. Let's go see him up close. Are you crazy? Said Jack. Don't you want to take notes about him? Asked Annie. We're probably the first people in the whole world to ever see a real live Triceratops. Jack sighed. Annie was right. Okay, let's go, he said. Jack shoved the dinosaur book into his pack. He slung his pack over his shoulder. Annie started down the ladder, and Jack followed her. Just promise you won't pet him, Jack called down to Annie. I promise, said Annie. Promise you won't kiss him, said Jack. I promise, said Annie. Promise you won't talk to him. I promise, said Annie. Promise you won't. Don't worry, said Annie. Annie and Jack stepped off the ladder. The Pteranodon gave them a friendly look. Annie blew a kiss. Be back soon, Henry, she called. Shh, said Jack, and he led the way slowly and carefully through the ferns. When Jack and Annie reached the bottom of the hill, they knelt behind a bush. Annie started to speak, but Jack quickly put his finger to his lips. Then he and Annie peeked out at the Triceratops. The dinosaur was bigger than a truck. He was eating the flowers off a magnolia tree. Jack slipped his notebook out of his pack. He wrote, "Eats flowers." Annie nudged him. Jack ignored her. He studied the Triceratops again. He wrote, "Eats slowly." Annie nudged him harder. Jack looked at her. Annie pointed to herself. She walked her fingers through the air. She pointed to the dinosaur. She smiled. Is she teasing? Jack wondered. Annie waved at Jack. Jack started to grab her. She laughed and jumped away. She fell into the grass in full view of the Triceratops. Get back, whispered Jack. Too late, the big dinosaur had spotted Annie. He gazed down at her from the hilltop. Half of a magnolia flower was sticking out of its mouth. Oops, said Annie. Get back, Jack said again. He looks nice, Jack, Annie said. Nice? Watch out for his horns, Annie, said Jack. The Triceratops gazed calmly down at Annie. Then he turned and loped down the side of the hill. Lopped down the side of the hill. Bye, said Annie. She turned back to Jack. See? Jack grunted. Ugh. But he wrote in his notebook. Nice. Come on, let's look around some more, said Annie. As Jack started after Annie, he saw something glittering in the tall grass. Jack reached down and picked it up. It was a gold medallion. A letter was engraved on the medallion, a fancy M. Oh man, someone was here before us, Jack said, softly. All right, that's the end of chapter 5. We will continue with Dinosaurs Before Dark from the Magic Treehouse tomorrow. See you then. Or on Monday.